continuing with the series of the Team Liquid Map Contest map reviews for the finalists of Team Liquid Map Contest 10, we have got now Dreamcatcher by Teammate. There are like a couple things. The map itself, it is like very well executed, but there are some big issues. The aesthetics also look fine, but as I was saying, there are a couple of big issues that worry me more than anything. The way, for example, the center. Here is a small overview of the map, obviously, before like we start doing the reviews. But you all basically know all of the map, so it's fine. The first thing that this is a map for the category of rush, and the area that worries me more than anything else, it is the incredibly straightforward attack path that goes from the natural to natural. As you can see, it is considerably straightforward. It is just low ground between the bases with like some rather open choke points. I already discussed some things with Teammate about the map, like for example adding rocks, a series of rocks. I'm gonna add ice here because it's most visible in the stream, in the video. Oh. So yeah, adding some rocks here in order to reduce the amount of units that can pass through the center, because of that sheer space that you have in here, it means that the armies won't really want to pass across the side path. That is, for example, why nowadays it is very common to see like a very early Loki 2-esque central bridge in the map with a very tight passageway where units can pass in the early game, and as the game progresses, that passage becomes too tight for bigger armies to pass through. So in this case, adding a couple of rocks would like considerably increase the late game playability of the map. The bottom of the bottom half of the map is like, I consider that it's like very well placed, everything around. The distances are like excellent basically, as it tends to be with most of Teammate's map. But the amount of attack paths is also like very, very good. So the map overall is, as I was saying, it's like very solid. It is a finalist. But there is also the issue of the attack path and of the area right in front of the natural. Because of the attack path itself, it means that armies can easily bounce around. So that means that if you do a timing push and that timing push fails or doesn't do like considerable amount of damage, your opponent can really turn the tide easily. It is a rush map, so it is kind of expected, but because of the lack of staging grounds that you can set up as you are advancing, you can't. If you retreat, you need to retreat all the way. You can't like just hang around the center of the map because it is so open. And this ties into the area in front of the natural. Usually, StarCraft map, it is very common that the action of the game like happens around the first initial bases, around the 3-4 bases initially, and it extends all through the game. So you won't see, for example, huge fights around, for example, in the corners of the map, because players usually prefer to give up their corner bases and retake them later than just to have a huge, colossal fight in an area that is not strategically valuable to the player. So this leads to scenarios where players will try to stitch up into the natural of the third base of your opponent. And all of this leads to the issue in the center here. where an army can like park around the slightly forward of the natural bases and just messed up the enemy positioning, especially for example in a TVC where Terran has some siege tanks, marines, or whatever, and they park like right around in the rallying point of the between the third and the natural hatch. That is basically a kill move for any set. So in order to reduce this issue, I was recommending Team A to just add a couple set of rocks in order to allow players to, where are the 2x2s? In order to allow players some small space to, in order to make the, for example, the armies try to pass towards the north instead of going directly, for example, against the third, and that will be ending the game instantly. It is a very specific kind of thing for the map, but other than that, it doesn't have like flaws by itself. Like the quality assurance that Teammates does is very thorough. So beyond that, for example, a couple things just to mention, like there is no issue, no direct issue, for example, in the main bases with liberators, because teammate put the time to adding extra space to avoid that problem. The only problem will be like lack of Reaper path, but you can see that there is already like Reapers can jump into the natural and the natural into the main, and that will allow, for example, adding a bit of counterplay to, for example, an Reaper Aline or whatever, a small degree at least. The fourth bases, I consider that maybe the north bases might be better, slightly closer, just in order to allow players to have the choice of taking their forward, their triangular third, or taking their linear third more easily, give them the option. For example, one is slightly closer, but it might be more exposed. Give them the option, like one is slightly closer, meanwhile the other is farther, but more easy to secure. Stuff like that. Beyond those kind of basic things regarding, for example, the central attack path, there is, as I was saying, there is really not much that I can say. Maybe, for example, making the cold bases slightly different than what they are now. Maybe the very corner base, make it a blue base, meanwhile the more central one is slightly more exposed and therefore a gold. But beyond that, also if the bases are gonna be kept that way, maybe probably change the variation of the minerals. Beyond that, there is really not much that I can say. The map, to me at least, it looks like very solid. There is maybe an overlord pod around the third, around the natural in this area, but that could be exploitable by liberators. So maybe it could be placed in the slightly in the back of the third. Other than that, it is an excellent map. At least for the limitations that mirror symmetry provides. I think this is like, for a rush map, is as good as it gets. So that's a small review for Dreamcatcher, and see you guys in the next one.